I have a very lovely lady who is my lady, and I've been able to play with code for lots of years. So now I'll turn to the subject. It's a little bit more difficult when you can't see the people and see how it's happening. If you have questions at any time, please ask them. Open source friendly RPC broker. And first I'll give a summary, and yes, I will give a summary at the back end as well, but we're going to talk about the RPC broker, and if SSH is used for the connection, it checks to ensure that SSH is active before connecting, and there's no encoding of the access verify codes or the context option, as is commonly the case with the VA version. If SSH is used, then it should be secure enough we don't have to worry about that at all. If SSH is not used, then each of the connections that we make gets a unique encoding table. This is where it differs tremendously from the VA version. And that encoding table is immediately replaced with another unique table, which is encoded during its transmission. And instead of just the access verify codes and the context option being encoded, all of the data is encoded so that anything that goes over the wire is at least encoded. You'll notice that I'm saying encoded and I'm not saying encrypted. If you're using SSH and later perhaps TLS or HTTPS, then that's encrypted. If you don't have that, then what we're using is encoding like the VA has done, excepting this would encode everything. It also provides the ability to use a two-factor authentication via a cell phone, and that's included with the SSH option. I will say that some cell phones you have to set up your mail and then let them know that in fact you are a valid sender. AT&T doesn't recognize it right off the bat. Others do, some of the others do. This also provides the ability to disconnect after a desired period of time when there's no interaction with the server. So if I sit there and I'm not doing anything, server will sit it, and instead of just timing me out, it saves all of the data, and when you go to reconnect, the user does not see that reconnection, but it creates a new job, restores all of the previous data, including data in TMT global, and lets you continue as though you had been there the entire time.
Yeah, just one point of clarification, Joel. This is Jack.
Yes.
This does not comply with 508 or HIPAA, correct?
The
reason is that if it's not captured encrypted versus encoded, my understanding is that there's still a potential problem there.
Okay, if we are talking about the 508 as the medical HIPAA,
correct.
I was thinking you were talking 508.
508 is distinct.
That's right. And I will tell you this, that if the application itself is 508 compliant, then this would be 508 compliant.
Because it's inside the tent.
The data is passed into the client, and yes, it's encoded but not encrypted. But 508 only cares that that the user can hear it or whatever is necessary for them to interact with it. And therefore, if the client is 508 compliant, then these connections are 508 compliant. Yes.
Okay. Pardon me for interrupting. I'm not an engineer, but these always come up.
Oh, no, that's not a
problem.
I've said to ask a question, so yes. And in the server side code, all of the files are in the KBBP namespace, not the VA namespaces. And you can use a basic VA connection. And if that happens, then when the server-side code here sees it, it immediately transfers all of that processing from that point on to the VA code. But the thing is that with all of our stuff in our own namespace, then if the VA makes changes, that's not going to affect us directly. And what we're doing doesn't affect them directly. So there's no collision. If the client will attempt that VA encoding, and then if that fails, the OSEHRA coding will take place. Okay. I don't know how I got this coming up there. Let's move it over. Okay. I'll give you some history of the RPCBroker. I actually proposed the idea of it at a developers meeting in 1994. There were applications being created in Visual Basic, in C, maybe early C#, but I think most of it was in C, and those languages. And the head of development at that time, Dan Bishop, said, no, we want to have all of development in one language so we don't have to worry about it. And what I proposed instead was that we have a broker interface on the server side that as long as they use the correct format in talking to it, then any language could be used. It was decided by management, however, didn't matter, that they would use the same programming language, Delphi, and it still uses Delphi. The interesting thing was that at the point they decided that Delphi hadn't even been released as a product. It was just in the process, and I always wondered if they owned stock in it myself. But I did build the remote procedure file. Enrique Gomez and I believe it was David La Liberte, but I can't guarantee that name, and my memory back to there has gotten difficult to get. I wasn't able to contact him. They built the original client-side RPCBroker. Wally Fort did most of the server-side work. Subsequently, Danila Martzpol, Don Craven, Raul Mendoza were involved in various aspects of the work. And from about 2000 until my retirement at the end of 2012, I was responsible for the client-side development of the RPCBroker. Herlin Westra has taken over development since then and probably regrets it, but that's okay. Come on, move to the next slide. Okay. What we're talking about here with respect to the VA RPCBroker functionality is that it's compiled into client applications. And at one time, a long time ago, yes, I created a DLL that other languages could use, but that hasn't been updated for 15 years at least. So it's not used at all now. After a connection is made, the user is asked to sign on. Access verify codes are encoded in using a set pattern and then transmitted. After the sign-on is completed, the context option for the application is also encoded and transmitted. All other communication is not encoded. And I've never quite figured out why the context option was safe enough, sensitive enough to be encoded, but that's a different problem. After a period of time, without any RPC being sent, the RPCBroker sends RPC XWB, I'm here, so that the server side knows it's still there and it maintains the connection. If after the period of time it should have received 2 of those and didn't, then the server side says, okay, he's gone, the connection is lost, and all of the anything that they was working on is removed because that job is killed.
But the essential functionality of a 2-component confirmations remains, yes? In other words, for me, as I do a 2-component verification when I'm dealing with some of the systems in both the DHA and the VA, where it sends me an email saying, who are you? Do we know you? And I send back the code, and that does the 2-component ID, just as though I had you know, the old magnet IDs that used to have on Blackberries.
Okay. I hadn't thought about using email to do it. The way we've done it is by text message, and or attempted to.
Yeah,
but,
that's the way this works now, is text message.
Yeah. Okay.
It comes right to my phone. I click on it, and I'm in.
Right. Right. And we used no security for years. I mean, we were actually, Wally Fort and I were threatened that if we tried to use security in our applications, because the network was supposed to handle all the security. And in 1997, we actually had an additional way to do logins, which used a third connection point. And that was tossed because, you know, the people told us, oh, we're going to have all of the networks secure within 6 months. And at that point in time, although the application was basically finished, we dropped it. That was the wrong thing to do because they have never really secured those networks. And finally, Wally and I, in about 2012 or so, did make RPCBroker connections with SSH. And we used P-Link. Once they started using AttachMate for their for their different text messages and using the computers, I used what AttachMate gave us as well. And so it supports both of them. And in both cases, access, verified, and context options are still encoded. And then the open source broker, what we've tried to do is actually generate the ability as well to use two-factor authentication with cell phones. If an SSH connection is used, I'm going to move calling user over there, 3, okay. Then there's no need for that encoding and access verify codes or the context names, and so, you know, it's not done if SSH is used. And for the open source broker, the default connection type of the broker, in fact, is with full encoding. All transmissions are encoded, not just access verify codes, the context option. And with the default connection, every connection gets its own unique encoding pattern. And once that's delivered to the client, it then also gets an updated encoding pattern. And so that, you know, if somebody's following it off the wire or something, and they can see the first encoding pattern, but then they have to move real fast to get that second one and be able to move between them and find out what was actually being used. And instead of using the keep alive messages, the broker disconnects from the server after saving all the local variables and data under up arrow TMP, $J, as well as temp variable $J. And then on the next RPC call, it just sets it all back up again in a different job number. And when the initial connection is passed, then it gives it a token, much like a token that would be used with CPRS and some of the other encoding for restoring a connection or else opening a second job. And that is used to identify the user and his data. When they use the basic VA connection type, as I said, the encoding patterns, they've been released many times. OSEHRA has its own encoding pattern, and if you get the wrong client trying to talk to the server with the other encoding pattern, it doesn't work. The broker development that was used as the base of this was XWB 1.160, and so all changes that I've made were on top of that. Where are you at there? Okay. On the server side, we've added some files, some options, and some remote procedures in the KBB namespace and global locations. As I said, all of the routines are based on KBBP, and we've used XWB as the original routines used with an asterisk. And the original XUS routines that we based it on are in KBBP XU namespace. And so that we have basically theirs to start with, and we've made modifications in the future. They can make their own modifications, we can make ours, and we won't collide. Under the new headers for these routines, we also contain the original headers so that they identify where they came from. And there are unit test routines that are under the KBP UX namespace. And if the basic VA connection is selected, like I said, then the KBP XWB1 routine immediately passes it to the VA code for all subsequent processing. This is what an example application that we've created with this broker looks like. It's basically is the broker example that was used with all of the other RPC brokers, and we've always released it so that the users of the broker can see how things function. You'll notice these tabs here, they show basically all of the different types of RPC connections that can be made, and so give the users instruction on that. And then we've added in this version a timeout in seconds, which can be set, and we've added the iterations and time it down at the bottom, as well as a values tab. This at the bottom, you can set this for 10 to 100 and then click time it. And as it runs, it will run all of the RPCs associated with these tabs that many times and determine how long it took. And so you can make a connection with the old VA versions. You can make a connection with the standard version here, which is the encoded and full encoding. You can make a connection with the SSH and then determine what the differences in timing are for each of those types of connections so that you can actually see it yourself. The timeout seconds is added in there so that on the sample we could adjust the timeout because I didn't necessarily wait 3 to 4 minutes for that timeout to happen. The options menu.
Is that one equally available to a cell phone user? And there's a reason for asking? The reason for asking is that you'd like to set your parameters to the situation so that you can see if you've got a one and done send, and therefore you're receiving on your cell phone your confirmation code at almost light speed, let me put it that way.
Well, this functionality here, okay, I go back. Well, go back a couple. Previous. I mean, that's the thing about the broker example. In the 60 OS, the OS added for open source, has all of the functionality built into it. And now, unfortunately, I don't have mail off of my system here, but what I can show you is this. If I go to connect here, and let me cancel that and make go here. Let's see. And what we're looking for, okay, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking for.
The KBB system parameters, and here's what I want to change is under here, KBBP 11338.991.2. And what I want to do is remember my let me just kill off 2802.1. 6061. Okay. like? What I'm asking is, well, crump. I need to and the
Yeah, there's the two-factor user data. That's what I was looking for.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and what I want to do, that's my phone number, my carrier, and here's the thing here. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to delete that one just because, what the heck. Okay, and now then, because I did try this earlier, and so it was already in there, if I go connect,
And the reason for bringing this up, I apologize, Joel, is that this
right
is
there.
exactly what a doc would like to do from his handheld device simultaneous to the event.
And now then, view KBBP. Because I don't have it and can't send it, what I can do is this, XWBD, and come back to that. But if I go back here, my number is 107539. Let me make that 38 and say send. Oh, yes. And I can say this is private, worker personal is not. If I say not, then every time you connect from there, it's going to ask it. Here, you can put in a certain period of time. And value did not. Another value is being sent, okay? So let me just come right over here and say I'm going to kill that one. And now then, viewing this. 10304. That, okay, and 1004, that should be 6 digits, so there it is, 9828, no, KBV token. Oh, that's the, let me, okay, and that's that one, let's go, damn, okay. Yes, well, I'm going to say chunk and now then connect. Let me do this.
I apologize to everybody else, but this is important with where we're going in the future, and where everybody's going to be working with a handheld device.
Okay, and now then, there it is, 235724.
Yep.
And I said it was 235724. And I'm going to say this is a private computer. Well, not. That way it'll ask me again. But there I'm connected, okay? So yes, that's...
But this gets people where they want to get maybe 2 years from now, not this year, but maybe 2 years from now, so that they're doing everything off their handheld or cart-modulated computer device in order to get the information they need on the patient, to get the RPCs and to keep the exchange going through because the infrastructure has to catch up. Am I right?
Oh, yes, and I have no question about that, and that's one reason it was built this way. Like I said, I know that AT&T, when I used Nancy Anthracite's system on her email system going out, it did not connect to me, but it did connect to a couple of other cell phones that we knew numbers for. And so it's a matter of letting AT&T know that that's a valid location. Okay.
This is Mark. Could I ask a question?
Yes.
I just want to make sure that I get this. I assume that the second factor is sent to the cell phone via text message. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Isn't there a growing concern and assumption that, in fact, we are over-relying on the security of text messaging, and that, in fact, that's probably not the best way to send a second factor? That, at least the literature I'm starting to read is saying that, you know, folks, including banks, are jumping to use text messaging, where this is far from an unspoofable and foolproof method of providing a second factor.
Yes and no. In terms of this, when you go to connect, it will ask you for that factor. That will, if you are using a work machine or your own personal machine, and you tell it that's good, we have the ability to say, you know, ask me again after 30 days. I mean, this would be set by the server side, but ask me again after 30 days or 60 days or a year. And if it's not, then it will ask you every time. The other thing is that that number has got to come through there and be there at exactly that point in time. And now, in terms of, let me go back over here and show you something. In terms of when this comes in, here is the information that comes in with that to be able to get that. It'll send, this is the name of my machine, this is the user, and this is the serial number of that machine. And so
they know it all.
It ties it down pretty good. And so, you know, if somebody else comes in and doesn't have that information on their machine and tries to spoof you, they're not going to be able to. So, I mean, this I put together, or, you know, I tried to put together so that it would be as secure as possible. And like I say, yes, it knows you down to the machine. And so if you go to a different machine, it's going to ask you, but if it's somebody else, they're going to have not only that machine, but your username and so on. And so part of the aim here was, in fact, if somebody from the outside, not a good guy, tries to come in, we're going to at least know this information, and they know your user stuff. I mean, they've already got your access and verify code. But then we could look here and see where it's coming from in terms of at least the machine and its serial number. And and with that, I'm going to continue on.
Thank you.
The options menu, as I said, you'll notice there's log RPCs. That is a standard part of the RPC broker in this. And with the default use, full encoding is here. And when we do log RPCs, if that's checked, this show encoding and logging comes up and is an option. And so you can see the encoded as well as the unencoded. So yes, and this one, basic VA connection, will allow you to use the basic VA connection that you want to, and it'll act like it always has. And yes, use SSH attachmate or plink. The CCAL user context would be there if a person wanted to use it, and debug mode isn't used much anymore, but it's there if you want to. This is what it looks like if I had turned on, and I could show you that, but if I had turned on the logging as well. And first thing it does is it says reset the encoding, passes no parameters, and it gets back this. the instant it gets that, it passes in a set encoding RPC. Again, no parameters. And now then, this came in the clear. Using this as your encoding now, it now gets another encoding set, which if I continue on, here then is, I pass in, as I always have, this information, and this is the result value that comes back. This is my intro message from this system. And, you know, I make it now so that in logging and in the RPC logging here, as well as what I was using to look up my my key number, is redacted. The access verify codes are redacted so that you can't use those to go back to the original. Because yes, if I put those into the right places, know where to, I could. Access verify code and so on. Now then, this is showing it with the encoded logging. This comes back as this, and this then is what it comes back as after I've unencoded all of this. So that you have the ability in the logging to see what the unencoded, undecoded data looks like before this. With did the XWB get variable value RPCs, then and that is one of the new ones that we've added in there, basically to demo what happens with this. If I let it time out after a period of time, and let's see if I may have actually there. After a period of time, well, one of the things we can do is over here, put in a value and let it time out. Concatenate a value to it, and what you'll get back is the old value, the one before you timed out, as well as the new one, concatenated together. Or I can kill them, I can set them, and so on. But this allows us to, in fact, see that even if we have timed out and then come back, and so then yes, we time out and we could do this again, and we'll get a different, well, let's do,
yeah. So
change
the old value
is
held somewhere in memory, Joel?
Well, no, this old value here is held on the server in the variable KVB value. And
gotcha.
then,
okay.
So that, you know, yes, I've timed out and I could look at this pass for reference. My job number will have changed, and yet
gotcha.
It's restored the old value as well. So that's what the two get variable values here is about. And so what it's showing us here is I've got a $H and $J, and here's what it comes through as. And then if I log that, after it's timed out, the access verify code RPC is followed immediately by the one I just clicked on to get it going. So that here I've got my access verify code values, and then my get variable value, here's that, and my $J was 22760 and is now 87224. So yes, it goes ahead and it does its things. The new values tab in the broker example, I've just explained it to you, that that's what we're using to be able to see that yes, even though it's timed out, disconnected, I'm reconnecting again, which you can verify by logging it, seeing the log, then you know, you see the data again and it's there. So this is what I was talking about, AAA, and now let it time out. And here is the $J value, 173556, and we have set this value, and then timing out in the 81 seconds. There's the old value, AA. Here's where it reconnects, the reset encoding, set encoding, and here's where the access verify code is processed. The user doesn't see that. And now then, what we've got back is where we put in BBBB. We're getting back that one, and the job number is changed as well. So that's the demonstration and the ability for this to show you that it in fact has timed out and restored itself, and the user, we've already, to a large extent, gone through this. It's two-factor authentication using smart cards. That's what the VA has gone to. In some services, Google, there's two-factor authentication with cell phones, and we're trying to support it with cell phones in Vista. We go to the KBB system parameters file and turn on two-factor authentication. During sign-on, it becomes active when a user has an entry in the two-factor user data file, and that's where we were at before, because that's where it specifies the cell phone number and the cell carrier. And if it's two-factor, yes.
So for NOAM, does that reassure you, Dr. Arts? NOAM Arts? We're not at the end of the rainbow. The rainbow is a little bit away, but we're damn closer to where we've ever been on an RPC broker that actually can work, and can work designed to the future.
Well, that's the reason this is the open source one. Sorry about that.
That's right.
If the two-factor authentication is active and the user authenticates with access verify codes, it looks at the identification of the computer, which, like I said, contains the computer name, the username, and the computer serial number. If any of that information is different, if the cell phone number is entered, has he authenticated before? If so, was it a non-public system? And if so, how long has it been? And if the first two answers are no, it's been too long, then, like I showed you, it sends it a 6-digit number, and that's sent to the user's cell phone. The new form presents for the user to enter that value, and as you saw, it takes it or not. It'll give it a few tries before it disconnects if you fail. And as I say here, note you may want to need to contact some carriers to have them process text messages from your mail server, because the KBB, and we have an option, KBB test cell carrier, that can be used to test your cell carriers. This is what you've seen it looks like for it, and again, the private and not private computers. The system parameters file contains an entry that points to 89. This is the first entry, and you don't expect one of them, but this points to your system kernel system parameter file, so that it can identify where it wants to work out. Specifies the activity timeout before the server says, oh, let me kill this job and restore it later. The maximum period of inactivity, you might set that for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. And after that, then yes, the job is gone. Case-sensitive verify code, that's not implemented. To implement that, I have to, in fact, make changes in, and I've got the code to do it, but I have to make changes in Vista code that is used, and they will keep updating. And so I haven't figured out how to go around that yet. Because if you sign in from with a telnet, the terminal, you're going to be going into the Vista code. And so in that case, case-sensitive verify code doesn't work well. The two-factor authentication turns it on or off, and the frequency, if, for example, you are on a private machine and so on, that determines how long before you specify it again. The support phone number, in case the user can't get it to work, and here, in fact, is my phone number. Okay, so if there are problems with this at the moment, they call me, but that's embedded in this file. And the maximum number of tries, so that can be set by the server as well. The other two files are the that are open source RPC broker. The two-factor user data, this keeps track of the user, and that name is the name of the machine, the client, and the server. Oh, excuse me, that's the log down here. This is the user's name, his cell phone number, and the cell phone carrier, and that is this file. And then the two-factor log, the system identifying whether it's marked as private or not, and the last date authenticated. And so, again, if SSH is used, we basically use the SSH. What the change that I've made is, before, it just assumed that SSH connection you were making was good. What happens if that SSH is down and you've got a client running on that number? So now then what we do first is we say, okay, let's make an SSH connection or a telnet connection to that SSH. And if I can get through with telnet, I say, no, we're not going to do it. If to the same client port number is used and I can't get through it with telnet, then yes, we'll go ahead and use SSH with that port number. The other thing that's changed is attachmate people told me, oh, use the same number on the client port number as on the server, and that way, everything will go through the same tunnel. Well, that's wrong, because like I say, if I come back and haven't made that connection and expecting to make it, the broker would still try to use that port number, and that could be insecure. And so what we do now is we take the port number, and I think we increase it by like 2088 or something like that. And then if I can make on the client side, and then one that does not connect as telnet, and then on the server side, use the regular port number. So that way, yes, if you're using the same client side port number for the SSH tunnel, then everything will still go through it. But to use the same one that you're actually pointing to, no, that's not a good idea. And so they told me wrong. And if SSH is used, not used, then we're doing the various things I've shown you here. Each one gets their own unique connection table, encoding table, and they get an encoded encoding table. But it's unique to them. Nobody else has it, and you only get it on that one connection. Any other connections, you get a different one. All of the data is encoded, and it's not affecting the speed over the network that much at all. I've run several tests on it. Provides the ability to use two-factor authentication, and that includes the SSH, because it's after I've made my connection. Ability of no interaction to reconnect, close that connection, and then reconnect with no loss of data or user interaction. Server-side code and files are in KBP namespace, not the VA namespaces. And basic BA namespace connection is used if they tell me to. And if that happens, then our code immediately transfers to them, and so they're on their own. Now,
the only thing I would say, Joel, is that when you're doing this actually in real life, the frequency on a handheld iPhone that a new number comes in to use to do the two-factor identification is lightning quick. It is the speed of light. You've got one and done, one and done, one and done, one and done. So that it's just something I wanted to relay to Noah Martz, that I don't say this is perfect, but it's way better than anything I've seen so far.
Let me turn on logging, and I'm going to execute that RPC. Oh, see, we got set encoding, and there is our new job number. So, yes, I talked long enough that we timed out. And so you can see that was the amount of time it took for it to restore. Let's go back and say, I hadn't done this, so yeah, you can't see it, but I'll put AAA in there, and then I'll go back here, and yes, we've still got that job number. And now then, I'll take, oh yes, my problem is that I've got to be able to get my clients or server sides operating with HTTPS correctly. I have already and have shown Sam Habiel the code I can put into RPCBroker to make an HTTPS or TLS connection with the highest level of protection. So that code on that side is right, but I've got to make sure that on the server side I'm actually going through to the port number I want and passing it. So once I get that, then yes, the open source broker will also be able to connect by HTTPS and TLS. So that, as I say, is still to come, but we're not far from it.
And I'm happy to help you, Joel, in that when you're ready.
Oh my gosh, Sam's on this call too. Doggone it, he's just striking me around today.
I love your signature slide, Joel. Retired
yes,
but still playing.
Yes, I do. I way too much. Way too much.
Yep.
So,
I have.
Joel, I have a couple of one question and one suggestion. So the question is this code out on the internet? Where can I go get it?
I was about to put it out there, and I will check. I may already have it out there, but it will be on my GitHub account. Is where it will be.
Okay.
Right.
And
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
The one hesitant, I'm going to answer the question, then I'll let him go ahead too. But the one thing that I hesitated on putting it out there for is that when I do, the RPC, the equivalent of XWB RB2, I believe it is, that contains the encoding that the VA uses, would in fact contain both the VA and OSEHRA. I've almost been tempted to tell people who want to use it, then connect me, send me an email and I'll send you that routine. But they've both been out there so many times, I don't know that if I should feel worried about it. But that's why.
What we as OSEHRA have been doing is that we are not using, the one that you call the OSEHRA cipher is not ours, by the way, but for what it's worth, we are putting the VA code back in the EXEs we make. So we are not distributing, we as OSEHRA are not distributing the quote-unquote OSEHRA cipher. So
okay.
That helps. It's actually coming out of the FOIA office, and I don't even know how, but it's coming out there.
I'm sorry, that's something that probably was in the text, and I didn't read all the text today. I don't know if anybody else could stand to read all that text either. But when you say I'm connecting with the VA-style broker, and it does, if it fails on the first attempt to connect, say, using the VA, then what it will do is immediately switch to the OSEHRA version, at least as I understood it, and then attempt to connect with that. And so that
was my understanding also, Joel. Peter, can you check that?
No, what Sam says is true, because we had this issue where the community member were using the VA cipher code, because that's been around for a long time, and the OSEHRA was using a different set, and the costing, an ability to connect. So we basically have switched back to using the classic cipher code. So on our server side.
Yeah, okay, but what I currently have is that it handles both of them so that, the problems that people have had in the past wouldn't occur. And if I only need the one, that's fine. But
so in any case, Joel, what I'm telling you, it's okay to release it as is, so it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the VA has said, no, we won't release it, and then it's in all sorts of things. So, yes, it's been interesting.
Actually, we are going to create another distribution that contains whatever we receive from VA, the FOIA, VA FOIA. that one will have that what you call this OSEHRA cipher code.
Okay.
So we will have a distribution that will have that. In which case, what you said will still be true.
Okay, Sam, you had a suggestion. And Sam always has very, very good suggestions.
So if you won't mind, actually, before I finish, if you manage to get that code up before Thursday, I would appreciate it, because Kevin is coming and I'm trying to convince him to take a look at the TLS code.
Okay.
And
it'll be up there before
he knows how
Thursday.
to do Delphi, so if I'm sitting with him, maybe we can get it hammered out.
Yeah, it'll be up there before Thursday.
Okay, good.
And now then, I think you've
Now the
asked enough questions.
Now the suggestion.
Okay.
So
I thought getting it up by
two-
Thursday was the suggestion. Okay.
Yeah. No. The two-factor authentication that's done using cell phones is not typically done commercially through email, but because, as you saw, there are many issues with it. There is mainly the way that people do it is they use a web service from a provider such as Twilio. Twilio is the most famous service provider in that area, and that service provider will you basically submit something via you make an HTTPS request actually to Twilio with the information that you want the user to send to the user, and it will send it to the user's telephone. And
yeah,
Twilio has several competitors.
Can I argue with you, Sam?
Yeah, go ahead.
When I do this, and I do this with some degree of frequency, I do it entirely from my iPhone. I get a speed of light response saying, put this code in. I put that code in, and I've accomplished my goal. So that you may be a moment behind the current circumstance, and I realize it's 2 years away, but this is the way it works right now for me as a goddamn doctor, as against a real live engineer like all the rest of you.
I'm not sure how calling Twilio to send an SMS is not real time. It is real time as far as
yeah, but I'm not calling Twilio, Sam.
So I'm just telling you, it's a web service call to send to just you're just telling it send an SMS message, and it sends an SMS message. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, it sends a text message that appears instantly on my screen. I respond to it, and I'm good to go.
Yes.
Okay.
And
that's correct. So now
before the end of the hour, so I'm not totally out of time and run over or something.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to just do this. This was our server value, job number, and I was taking longer this time, but there, okay. And now then, this is the value we put in before, and I'm going to concatenate that to there. There's the result.
All right.
So that, yes, we timed out. We reconnected. It did not ask me for anything, and all of my data has been restored. As long as any temporary data you put in there in globals is in TMP underneath your job number, or TMP, a variable, underneath your job number, and that takes care of that. And with that, yes, you can ask as many questions as you want or talk as much as you want. I'll enjoy it.
All right.
And to everybody else who has attended, thank you very much for attending. I don't know how many of you are out there, but I'm looking forward to the open source broker being a key development point in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, much appreciated. Peter, over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. I think we're out of time, and thank you, Joe. I'm looking forward to this contribution because we really need extra security for the RPCBroker, and that's an issue that's been around for many years. Thank you for your effort.
Okay, most certainly, and thank you very much for allowing me to present it.
Okay. All right, everybody have a good night. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.
How do I get out? Stop sharing. Okay.